Welcome to Brea Talks, an insider's look into topics that affect your experiences in the city of Brea. Whether you live, work, or play here, we're bringing you the information you need to better understand your city. So now, we invite you to listen in as Brea Talks. Hello and welcome. I'm Dan Fenstermaker, and today Brea talks recycling. Specifically, what goes where. This is actually going to be a two-part episode, with part one focusing primarily on the history of the concept of recycling and how to properly sort what it is that you are trying to recycle. And part two will focus on organics recycling as primarily California Senate Bill 1383, the newest piece of legislation regarding recycling organics. So who better to discuss all this with us than Brea's very own recycling team from the Brea Public Works Department, Francesca Vivanti, and Destiny Garcia. Welcome to the program. Please introduce yourselves. I mean, I kind of just did, but let everybody know what exactly it is that you do for the city of Brea.
Yeah, so Francesca here. I am a management analyst here in Public Works. I oversee all of the solid waste recycling programs at the city. That includes the residential, commercial, industrial, multifamily aspect, but I also do the construction, demolition, waste management plan reviews. Before Brea, I worked for a waste hauler, so I've been in the solid waste industry for a bit now.
Right on. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Destiny?
Hi, everyone. This is Destiny here. I'm the recycling coordinator here at the City of Brea. Some of my duties include conducting site visits to some of our commercial properties to make sure that they're set up with all three waste streams, the recycling, organics, and their trash services. I also review waivers for SB 1383 to determine if any of those businesses might be eligible for a de minimis or space constraint waiver, so they don't have to be set up with those services. And I've been helping Francesca with the implementation of our organics waste program here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Before we get into the minutia of recycling and sorting and whatnot, let's be clear up front. What you hear in this episode and the subsequent episode regarding the current process of recycling applies strictly to Brea only for the sake of our discussion. It's possible that there are similarities with surrounding agencies, but Brea has a contract with Republic Services, which is its waste hauler. And if you are listening and you live outside the city of Brea boundaries, first of all, thank you. You're just as welcome, and we appreciate your listening. But it is best for you to check with your own agency and agency's waste hauler for direction on the process of what goes where when recycling. I think we should start at the beginning. As Maria von Trapp would say, the beginning is a very good place to start. When did recycling become a thing? I'm sure, like a lot of our younger listeners, they've grown up with recycling. The idea that recycling is, just something you do. But I can remember, because I'm super old, growing up in this national campaign starting of this is something that we should do. We should make an effort for. I believe the phrase was recycle, reduce, reuse was like one of the original kind of mottos. So what kind of sparked all of this, the idea of recycling?
Yeah, so California's always had a robust environmental system set in place. The first type of solid waste bill that California had passed was actually back in the 1920s. But that doesn't have to do with really any of the programs that we know today. That really came from Assembly Bill 939. It was passed in 1989. Ooh, not 1899. Whoa, that was really old.
Way back.
1989. And that basically required jurisdictions to divert at least 50% of the solid waste stream either towards recycling or composting activities. So AB 939 really got the ball rolling.
Okay.
And then fast forward, a lot of businesses were now required to have recycling and organics recycling programs. So Assembly Bill 341, that was passed in 2011, that required businesses, commercial properties, multifamilies, to have recycling services if they have 4 cubic yards of solid waste or more per week.
Okay.
So they have to set up recycling programs. There was Assembly Bill 1826. That was in 2014. That was mandatory organics recycling for commercial businesses.
Okay.
That was for if you have 2 or more cubic yards of solid waste generated per week. And then when I say solid waste, it entails trash, recycle, organics.
Okay.
Usually, when people think of solid waste, they just think of trash. When you're reading these bills, whenever they say solid waste, it typically pertains to any sort of waste that is being generated.
Sure.
Then in 2016, we have 1383, Senate Bill 1383. That went into effect in 2022. It's the short-lived climate pollutant reduction strategy bill.
That's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. It's basically an organics recycling bill. It requires everyone in the state of California, residents, businesses, multifamilies, to recycle and recycle their organics.
Okay.
So food waste, food soiled paper, even like paper and cardboard is considered organics under the definition of 1383.
Okay.
Certain businesses are also required to donate edible food. Only like the big businesses like supermarkets or wholesalers, whatever.
I see.
If they're selling food, they have to have some sort of edible food recovery agreement set up to donate food that would otherwise be disposed.
I see.
But that's pretty much the programs that, in a nutshell, what have shaped the recycling programs that, impact us today.
Got it. Okay. So, and like as you mentioned, 1383 there at the end, that is the newest piece of legislation. And that's definitely going to be hyper focused on the next episode, specifically talking about organics. But I think it's interesting you touched on cardboard and paper, where that is now organics.
Yes.
But it used to not be. I mean, it used to be considered just recycle. And just to clarify, because we've our division, communications and marketing, has worked with you a lot recently on the implementation of this as it relates to Brea, and I've learned a ton. And when you say trash, it's actually waste, encompasses everything that leaves your place of business or your home, and trash is landfill.
Trash is landfill.
And recyclables, if that's the proper pronunciation, would be something that be recycled. And then organics is like organic waste. It's food. It's but it's not just food now. It's cardboard, paper.
Yes.
Stuff that is
organic material.
Organic material.
Yeah.
So it was living at some point.
It was.
At some point,
it was
alive.
living.
It was. Okay. Okay. Good to know. But on that subject, let's talk about what's not. Before we get into organics in the next episode, we should probably do a refresher. There's a right way to recycle, and then there's a wrong way, or as I've learned, the phrase is wish cycling. And what it comes down to is, whereas, people think they know, I certainly did think that I knew what is recyclable and what's not. That's actually, there's a lot of common misconceptions with regards to that. And that's what we call wish cycling. The idea that, it's made of plastic, so it's recyclable, or, things of that nature. Talk to us a little bit about wish cycling.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Dan, wish cycling is this idea that where you have an item that might be created with plastic materials. And once you're either ready to discard those items, you think, okay, it's made of plastic. Let me throw this in the recycling bin.
Right.
But, that's typically not the case. And this is very common for people to be confused about, just because, they think that, it should be going in the recycling because it's plastic.
Right.
But once you throw those items in the recycling bin, it could create issues at the recycling centers because they contaminate the waste streams.
Okay.
And when they can contaminate the waste streams, there's less of that recyclable product that can be repurposed.
Right.
As it contaminates the waste stream. And some of the common items that people often think are recyclable include plastic bags. That's like one of the bigger materials that are often thrown in the recycling can when they should be thrown in the trash can.
Okay.
Another item includes pet waste. People often think that since it's coming out from your pet, it should be thrown in your organics.
Yikes.
But yeah, pet waste is definitely not supposed to be thrown in your organics.
Just because it came from a living thing doesn't make it a living thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And does not belong in organic. Okay.
Yeah, pet waste should be thrown in your trash. I'll make that disclaimer here. Another common item or common items that should be thrown in your trash instead of your recycling include plastic wraps and chip bags. Those are other like items that people think, oh, it's plastic. Let me throw it in the recycling. But yeah, as I mentioned, those items should definitely be thrown in your trash can.
And these are things that have been made of a multiple array of materials. And that's why they are no longer... Were they maybe even perhaps made from recycled material before? Is that the idea? Is it like, are you recycling a recycled thing and it only has so much life? Is that?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would say that a lot of these items are often created with a lot of mixed material recyclables.
Right.
So it makes it harder to, once it's taken to a recycling center, to get that like pure product because it has so many different compartments to it.
Sure.
Yeah, so like a good rule of thumb is if you don't know where the item goes, throw it in the trash.
Got it.
And another good rule of thumb is if the item is flexible, it has some sort of flexible packaging, like Destiny said, the chip bags, the plastic wrap, flexible packaging typically is not recyclable.
Okay.
So if it has some, nice movement with it, then...
If it's a little more like... If there's some rigidity, plastic water bottle, like a Sparkletts water bottle.
Yeah, if it has structure, typically it should be recycled. But like the flexible plastic packaging, typically not.
I see. As I mentioned, I did a lot of wish cycling.
And it's well intentioned. It's well intentioned.
Sure.
But it's just like,
well, you hear plastic, you see it's made of plastic, it's recyclable, right? Yeah. But I will say that like now, since working with you both, I'm like super attuned, and I will say like, I don't go with something in my hand to my waste bins without thinking for a quick second, and then acting accordingly. And like you said, if I don't know, I landfill it and it just goes into the trash. But I will say this, I mean, to our listeners, it sounds like, OMG, like this is so much to keep track of. And yeah, there's some memorization and some memory that is involved. But you know what? So is driving a car. Think about when you get in a car, like, not just starting the car, but then now all the rules of the road that you have to follow. And I know there's some people out there that don't do a great job with that either. We won't get into that. Maybe that's for another episode. But I will say that, if you can remember that, if you can remember all the things for that, you certainly can train yourself to kind of recognize the, what goes where a little bit better to help your, help the cause, help the sorting. Once it gets to the facility. Let's talk about that though for a second. Let's talk about the process. That's a good segue. Let's talk about the process. So I'm at home. I have a green bin. I throw. I've carefully thought each time I've gone to this bin. does this belong in this bin? And look, I got 100%. I got it right. Okay, let's just give me the benefit of the doubt. I don't have a dog, so we know that that's not in there, right? We don't know that's not in the organics or anything like that. But let's say that the green bin is I've nailed it and I've got everything in there, but it's all mixed up. I've got aluminum cans in there.
In your organics cart?
No. In my recycle bin.
Okay,
in my
yeah.
recycle bin. I've got aluminum cans in there. I've got plastic water bottles. I've got just all different kinds of materials that you said, shouldn't be mixed up, necessarily when you make it, but they can be mixed up in that bin. What happens to that bin? That bin gets taken.
Yeah.
And where does that go?
So all of the recyclables here in Brea get taken to Republic Services Recycling Center in Anaheim.
Okay.
And once it gets transported to that center, it goes through various screens.
Okay.
Where each screen kind of takes out a different contaminant if there's any available. So there's screens that remove larger items that aren't supposed to be in the recycling stream.
Okay.
There's also in-person hand picking section out where there's employees that take out larger contaminants that aren't supposed to be processed in there.
Right.
And then they're separated by each type of stream. So the bottles will be separated out, the cardboard will be separated out.
And a lot of this is done by hand?
It's
Or it's a mix.
Yeah.
It's a mix.
Both.
Got it.
So for like the larger items, that's more of the hand process,
Sure.
hand picking process. But they have the screens that are developed to help separate the plastics, the bottles, the paper, the cardboard, and then that is all taken and put into bales.
Got it. Okay. That's fascinating. That's good to know. I think that's a question a lot of people might have in terms of like, well, then what happens to it, right? I mean, how are they going to, is it really going to be that big a deal if, but that's good. That's good insight.
Yeah, and the only thing that they ask, our Republic Services and many of the other waste haulers for our recyclable materials is to ensure that they are clean and dry and don't have any remaining food waste in them.
Right.
That way, it doesn't contaminate the waste streams.
Sure. No, like you were talking about earlier, that pure recyclable material needs to be clean. That's good. Okay, so then let's transition to the bummer part. You talked about a lot of you talked about how it's a mixed process of screening and hand sorting, but there are times where it's too much and there's too much contamination in a particular haul. What happens? What happens if we don't do it right and it's bad for them?
Yeah, if the material can be easily removed. So let's say you put a water bottle in your organics cart and you can just easily take that water bottle out.
Right.
It can still get processed.
Okay.
But if you put food waste into your recycling and then that food waste gets all up in the other
mucks up the materials.
Yeah, then that's when contamination really becomes an issue, and that container now is pretty much all going to be considered contaminated and then sent and processed as trash to the landfill.
So then all that effort that was attempted is for naught.
Essentially, yeah. Yep.
And that's it's certainly at that point, what's the point, right? So we want to make sure that like, we're doing this correctly. But yeah, like you said, like, don't put plastics in your organics, but like they God forbid that happens. You can remove it when you got food and all this stuff that's like just covering it just doesn't work.
It would be
nobody's going to be washing your trash.
Correct. Yeah. It's too much work. It would take a lot more money to process material that was coming in extremely contaminated. So that's why, Republic Services, like Destiny had mentioned, is always telling people when you're throwing stuff away, make sure when you're putting things in the recycle, make sure it's clean, empty, dry. So
for sure. And then there's actually another part of this. I feel like we have to let people know that there are potential financial consequences that might fall on the consumer in the way of fines. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So CalRecycle, as part of Senate Bill 1383, allows jurisdictions to enforce the regulations. So there's, a set of fines that could be assessed should there, be continued contamination or noncompliance. For residents, it could look like you can either get the fine or Republic Services, before they're servicing, may provide like a notification to the resident, being like, "Oops, this shouldn't be in there."
Right. Right.
And it'll literally say "Oops."
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a soft. It's a soft.
Yeah, they're what they call the oops tags.
Got
Yes.
it. Okay. Okay. Like you're talking to a 2-year-old that maybe doesn't know the difference between right and wrong, but you know.
It'll
Oops.
so they'll put an "Oops" tag.
Okay.
And the resident would either have to remove the contaminant, and then let me backtrack a little. They'll
Sure.
have to remove the contaminant and then request Republic to come back out to service their cart, or they have to wait until the next week
I see.
to have their cart serviced.
So this kind of leads into my last question. Obviously, by the time it gets to the hauling site, it's too late. It's all been mixed together. There's no telling who did what. So
Right.
the only way to actually determine the oops itself, the oops in the Oops Act,
Yes.
is to do what are called lid flips
Lid flips, yes.
or audits.
Yeah, so in 1383, we call them route reviews.
Route reviews.
So it's a random sample. It is lid flips, like, in plain terms.
And it sounds it's exactly what it sounds like.
Yes, so a random sample of people on a specific route. There's multiple routes, in Brea,
Sure.
of course. And a random sample is audited, given a lid flip in the morning, bright and early, seeing what's inside each of the 3 streams, the trash, recycle, and the organics. If there's contamination, that's when,
Oops.
oops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to let people know that that if they see somebody out there going through their trash can, that's what that is.
Yes. And
Most likely.
Yes, and that would be performed by Republic Services.
I see.
But before it's even, done, they will provide notification to us at the city as to where they're going.
I see.
It's going to be random to the public, but the city staff will have, advance notification of which streets they're going to be on and who.
And that's for our benefit to make sure that we are, we specifically in our division, are doing our job in getting the word out and letting people know.
Yes.
The proper way.
Yeah.
Of recycling.
Yeah, and it's not going to be like, let me just dump your entire trash cart into the street.
That's good.
Yeah, it's still going to be contained within the cart. It's just us taking a look and seeing, what the contents are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it is something that it sounds like a lot, and in a way it is, but I feel like, just we're here to help, right? We're here to help. We're here to educate. And this is all great information. And where can residents and businesses get more of this information?
Yeah. So our RecycleBrea webpage, CityofBrea.gov/RecycleBrea.
Okay.
We have all of the information that you would need on there.
Okay.
We also have PDF handouts. So if you want to print out your own materials, you can. They can also call Public Works 714-990-7691 or email the RecycleBrea team. That's Destiny and I at RecycleBrea@CityofBrea.gov.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. You up for another round?
Yes.
In a couple of weeks, we'll do this again.
Definitely.
Get into organics.
100%.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited. Thank you both again so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Brea Talks. This episode and all episodes of Brea Talks can be heard wherever you get your podcast, as well as on the Brea TV and the Brea TV app. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and review. And we'll see you next time. Like I said, next time we're talking organics. So come on back.
Love it.
Thanks again for listening in as Brea Talks.